I'm Jack, and welcome back because today I'm going to give you guys a ranking of the summer movies that I saw this year from worst to best. Before I get started, let me know down below in the comment section what's your ranking. I'd love to hear it. If you haven't seen that many, just give me your favorite of the bunch. I'd love to hear all that down below in the comments. There are some really good movies we got this year, and I'd love to see what your ranking is, or just which one is your favorite. And just to let you guys know, I haven't seen every movie this summer, so there are going to be some movies that when you look at this list, you're like, haven't seen this yet, or maybe I should go check it out. Let me know that down below in the comments as well. I'd love to see your recommendations. And with that said, let's get started. In last place is none other than Spiderhead. This movie's not without merit. I think that Chris Hemsworth is awesome in this movie. I love he gets to play against type here, and I really like Miles Teller and Journey Smollett here. All of them are really great. There's an interesting concept here with mood-enhancing drugs and this all being in a penitentiary, and it follows around these prisoners who are volunteers for these experiments. There's a good idea here. It's a very well shot and a visually good-looking film with some very good production value put into it. The screenplay, though, it just falls apart. It gets very generic by the time you get to the climax. There's no twist. There's no turn. Everything plays out exactly as you think it does. And it feels way too long for its own good with the runtime. And even at times, it's very tonally inconsistent where you have a scene that's very comedic at times. And then right after that, it's very just mature and whatnot. It just feels like the movie didn't know what kind of movie it wanted to be, and by the time it gets to the ending, it just doesn't feel like this was a movie that capitalized on its full potential. It's not the worst movie I've seen all year. There's some merit to be had here, and it's perfectly watchable, but this is the movie that came out this summer that I don't have as much desire to revisit, and I find it crazy how in a span of 3 weeks, Joseph Kosinski made one of my favorite movies of the summer, which you will see higher up on the list, and then he made this movie just for Netflix a few weeks later. Next up is Jurassic World Dominion. Out of all the movies I've seen this year, this is probably the most disappointing movie I've seen all year. I think that Jurassic Park, absolute masterpiece, one of the best movies made by Spielberg and of all time. And even though the sequels never reach the heights of the original movies, I think Lost World and so has Jurassic World are both fun enough movies for their own good. And then there were some great ideas for Dominion that could have made this an awesome conclusion to the Jurassic Park franchise. And it was anything but that, because rather than focus on the humans and dinosaurs coexisting like it was marketed and like what we were all hoping this was going to be, it just takes the setup and does something completely different where it focuses on corporate espionage and locust and cloning. Why? And that just felt very odd for a Jurassic Park movie to focus on anything but dinosaurs, and it just feels very contrived, and the plot just doesn't make sense. Like, a lot of things happen just so they can move things quickly along, and a lot of the characters don't really have character growth by the end of this movie, except for Bryce Dallas Howard's Claire Dearing. Now, there are some cool sequences here. It's nice to see the characters, both the original characters and the Jurassic World characters, finally all together in this movie. But even then, the story just felt very disappointing, and it did not feel like it capitalized on being an awesome climax for the entire franchise. And I left the theater where I don't hate this movie. There are certainly moments I enjoy, and it was just nice to see the original characters return. I just think of all ideas, why did they go for this story to wrap things up? There's a big gap between Jurassic World Dominion and the movie that's up next on this ranking. So the bottom two movies are movies I would probably be mixed to negative on. Everything else I like to an extent. So here we go. Next up is Minions: The Rise of Gru. None of the Despicable Me movies have been great beyond that first movie, but I was pleasantly surprised by Minions: The Rise of Gru. I love that we got to see Steve Carell return as a young Gru, and whenever the movie focuses on him, I think it's really strong. I think there's some strong story ideas here that actually work well, and it wasn't just a movie about the Minions just being the Minions, because that didn't work so well in the first Minions movie. But the Minions stuff worked far better than it had in the first movie, and I think this is just a big step up. There's great pacing here, and the story good ideas. There's some really good moments here, and it is a pretty entertaining movie and easily my second favorite installment in the Despicable Me franchise since the original movie. But however, when it wasn't focusing on young Gru, it reverts back to Minions 1 territory, and it feels like the movie's just trying to justify a long runtime and just all these things thrown into the mix when I didn't feel like a lot of the stuff was necessary. But in the end, I was surprised by this movie. It's not amazing, it's not top tier of the year, but it is a fun movie that I enjoyed watching. In 11th place is The Gray Man. I was looking forward to this movie, especially with Ryan Gosling's return to Hollywood, and so is Chris Evans once again playing the villain in a movie, and it has the Russo brothers directing, who's made some of my all-time favorite comic book movies with Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. And although I was not a fan of Cherry that they put out with Tom Holland last year, I was really hoping that this movie was going to be a fun addition to their filmography, and it was. While the first half of this movie, the action can be a bit rough, it gets so much better as it progresses, and I think that it's competently made. I like the cast. I like the action sequences. There's some really big and bombastic stuff here that I think is really cool, and in terms of Netflix's movies, this is one of their better ones that they have put out over the past couple of years. I had a fun time with it. It's not game changing, it's not innovative. Some characters could have done a lot more, and some characters could have had more development as a whole, and the plot may not be anything too new, but I had fun with it. I like the cast, and it's a perfectly watchable action thriller by the Russo brothers, and I'm looking forward to that sequel. In 10th place is Thor: Love and Thunder. This movie is probably going to be one of my more controversial takes on this channel. Because I don't think this movie is as amazing as Ragnarok. It's nowhere near that level, but it's not as bad as people say it is. It's not one of the worst MCU movies ever made. I think there's some merit to be had here. I think it's a pretty colorful movie, and this is easily the best the relationship between Thor and Jane has ever been in this franchise. I cared a lot more about them in this movie than I did in the first two Thor movies, and I love what this movie does with Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, with her being the mighty Thor, how that plays off with Thor and just this whole storyline. There's a lot of really meaningful moments that happen there that I really love, and Chris Hemsworth is great as Thor, so even though he doesn't have as much character development, there are some moments of empathy that he shows for our characters, especially Jane in this movie, that I thought worked well, and there are some very heartfelt moments here. And the humor, while doesn't land as well as it did in Ragnarok, there's still some gags and jokes here that really had me laughing, and there's some fun moments here. It's not the most amazing MCU movie. I wouldn't go that far personally, but I do not think this movie is as bad as people say it is. So while it's a flawed movie, it could have been a lot longer and it could have explored more characters and more of some themes it's tackling. It's a fun movie and it's a fun addition to the MCU. So it's not one of the best, but it's not one of the worst either. Next up is Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I didn't have much expectations for this movie, but I was pleasantly surprised by it. I love Andy Samberg and John Mulaney as Chip 'n Dale. I love just the dynamic and the back and forth banter they both had. I was able to sell to the fact that these two are lifelong best friends, and there were just so many surprising moments to where it's about these two trying to get back together and solve like missing persons case because one of their former castmates from their show got kidnapped and was going missing. I just was very surprised by this movie. It's so much fun. It's very funny. There's a lot of cameos and surprises to where it doesn't take up the whole movie. It's not what the whole movie's about. But when it's there, it has me laughing at how was Disney able to pull this off. But it's just such a fun movie. The comedy's on point. I really like the characters, and it's so well paced that it feels like if you are a Chip 'n Dale fan, you are going to love this movie and what it was able to give out. I think it's just a very well crafted movie. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's fast paced, it's exciting. And although certain aspects of it don't quite work as well as it could have, I still had a blast with this movie. In 8th place is Lightyear. I thought Chris Evans was great as human Buzz Lightyear. I think he's great. I never watched and thought that was Captain America. I truly bought in to the fact that he was Lightyear. And animation's absolutely gorgeous. It's Pixar. It's always expected from them, and it's no different here. It very much feels like a tribute to the sci-fi genre with elements of Interstellar and Star Wars and Star Trek. And I think there's some really cool moments to be had here. It's not the most thematically deep movie from Pixar. It's not the most riskiest they've ever made, but it's a fun sci-fi movie from Pixar that I just enjoyed watching. And although I do not like the villain twist at all, I don't think it makes sense. And I do think it could have taken more risks to do something more creative. And it feels more like a sequel to a movie than a first movie in a series. It's a fun enough movie. So although it's not perfect, it's a watchable and an entertaining movie added to Pixar's filmography. Next up is The Black Phone. Scott Derrickson's crafted a really great horror movie with this. I love Ethan Hawke as the grabber. So creepy and sadistic, and I truly bought into that here. And this whole situation is very intense for a horror movie where a kid got kidnapped by a sadistic madman, and he's stuck in this soundproof basement with a phone that's disconnected. And what is he going to do to get out of there? It's already, right from the get-go, a serious and an intense movie. And I really like how this movie progresses our lead character of Finn, who's in this horrible situation, and he tries to find his way out. It's dark, it's nail-biting, it's intense, and it really delivers on that front. And I love the character growth he goes on. And so as with the sister, what does she try to do to save and find out where is her brother? And this is how you make a great thriller. And even though it's not quite as scary as it is thrilling, it has great performances from Ethan Hawke, Mason Toms, and Madeline McGraw. And it is a very well-crafted movie by Scott Derrickson. In sixth place is Bullet Train. This movie is an absolute blast. I love this ensemble cast assembled with Brad Pitt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Brian Tyree Henry. The cast was so fun to watch. The action sequences are very well shot. I can tell what's happening. It's well choreographed, from gunfights, knife fights, hand-to-hand combat. So great. And it's just so colorful too, with so much style and distinct flair to it that only David Leitch could have brought on screen. It's a fun action movie. And although the plot can be pretty convoluted with all these characters and how everybody's at this particular point in this movie, and so is the runtime being a little bit longer than it needs to, it's an absolute blast and such a fun ride at the theaters, pun intended. Kicking off the top 5 is Nope. More like yep.
I thought my jokes were bad.
Jordan Peele has directed another awesome movie to his filmography with Nope. It feels very reminiscent of Spielberg, especially with Jaws. For instance, it very much feels inspired by that. It is such a great summer movie, one of the best I've seen all year. It is very much a creature movie of sorts, and I just love how mysterious it is, and it has so much ambition and originality to it, where I truly was not sure what was going to happen in this movie. And I love the cast, from Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer and Brandon Perea and Stephen Yeun. Everybody is awesome in this movie, especially the dynamic between Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer. I love their sibling dynamic they had. I bought into it. It's one of the best I've seen all year. And the visuals and cinematography are breathtaking. It's some of the best shot movies I've seen all year by Hoyte van Hoytema, who directed some of my favorite movies of all time, like Interstellar. And there are some intense scenes here, and there are some great moments of humor where it doesn't take away from the situation at hand, but it feels perfectly placed with what is going on. And it is such a great movie, and the third act is so spectacular, and I love how it just resolves everything that's happened in this movie and what it means. There's so much meaning and messages to a lot of things I'm still trying to uncover, because it is very thematically deep, and you really have to pay attention to what's on screen when watching Nope, because there's so much to it, and it's such an interesting and such a great movie of the summer. I absolutely loved this movie. In fourth place is Elvis. This movie is one of the best biopics I've ever seen. I think Austin Butler is phenomenal as the rock and roll icon himself. He dressed, he acted, and so has moves like Elvis Presley, and I bought every second of it. After the first 20 minutes, I felt convinced I was watching Elvis Presley and not an actor playing him. And just the singing and the concert scenes are awesome and so immersive that it feels like you're actually in one of Elvis Presley's concerts. And I love how stylish this is. It feels very much like the work of a director. Very much shows you that only Baz Luhrmann could have made this movie. And I think this is easily such a great movie for him to make with someone of his style. I think it's so visually impressive. And even though at times it could be a little overwhelming at first, I just love this movie. I think he is the best pick for this movie. Loved Austin Butler, and I really enjoyed Tom Hanks playing a much more villainous role as Colonel Tom Parker. And the cinematography is great. The costuming's excellent. And I love a lot of this movie as it progresses past that first act. While although the first act is good, the second and third act are both absolutely phenomenal. I just really love this movie. It is one of the best biopics I've seen. The cast is fantastic. I'd be surprised if they don't get Oscar noms for this movie because it is indeed one of the best movies I've seen all year. In third place is Prey. This is easily the best sequel to come out of the Predator franchise. It has a great lead character with Nadu. Made a pronunciation error in that review, so that's the correct saying of it, according to Dan Trachtenberg right here. But this is just such a great addition to the franchise. I think we have a compelling lead character. I love these time setting of early 1700s, and so as how we're seeing this lead character who wants to be a hunter and wants to show her peers that she can do this. And she goes all this way and she finds up this mysterious creature out in the wilderness, and she tries to do whatever it takes to kill this creature. And it's intense. It's very gorgeously shot, and it's a bummer this did not come out in theaters because this movie would have been so cool to see on the big screen. There's some awesome action sequences. Even in the middle to third act of this movie, it's impressive. It is an amazing Predator movie, one of the best I've seen all year. And this is the exact kind of Predator movie that I want to see more of, where we see Predator like in other time periods. And this movie is just such a great revitalization of the Predator franchise. I loved Amber Midthunder as Nadu. I think she is easily one of the best protagonists in the franchise. And it's such a compelling watch to see her grow from being who she was by the start and being this character as the movie progresses. I think it's just an awesome movie. Easily the second best movie in the franchise. In second place is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. There are some narrative issues with this movie. It does feel like there could have been more added to it. Maybe with Multiverse, they could have explored more universes. That although there may be some untapped potential, I still love what we got of this movie. I just love seeing Sam Raimi return to the comic book genre. I love the performances by Benedict Cumberbatch and Elizabeth Olsen, and it's one of the most colorful and beautiful movies in the MCU. I love it. Feels so comic booky. I love the costumes. I love the score by Danny Elfman, and there are some great scenes here and even moments that really remind me of Evil Dead in a good way. This is a blast. This is one of the best Marvel movies to come out post-Avengers Endgame. And although narratively and story-wise it's not perfect, there are quite a few issues with the story, I still love what we got here. So even if this movie had super high expectations and wasn't always met by most people, I still love what we got here. Just to see Raimi come back, make a horror movie, and love what it does with the characters. And it's such a fun, fast-paced movie in the franchise where I was engaged and excited to just see how things will play out in those 2 hours and 6 minutes. It is finally that time. I've gone through the entire list except for one movie in the top of the list. I wonder what that will be. This is a movie that I have seen quite a number of times, and every time I watch it, it gets so much better. And after all these delays, it's even more worth it. And that movie is Top Gun Maverick. This movie is an absolute triumph. It was worth every second of those delays we've had to go through with this movie. It is one of the best Tom Cruise movies. It's one of his best performances ever. And I love all these characters, from Maverick to Penny to Fanboy to Hangman to Rooster to Cyclone. Everybody was fantastic in this movie. Visually and cinematography wise, it's one of the best I've seen all year. There's some beautiful shots in the opening and even spread throughout this movie. And you have a story that's so heartfelt and emotional and well executed, where you care about the mission, you care about our characters succeeding in the end, and it has some fair moments of nostalgia for the original film, and it feels very well earned with some very emotional moments and great character work to do that. And it's such a feel-good movie too. I just love watching this movie. It gets so much better the more I watch it, and there are sequences here that I absolutely love. It makes me feel so good watching this movie. And the aircraft sequences, what can I say that hasn't been said already? It's beautiful. It's fantastic. Easily the best on screen of all time. And I have to admire how much dedication Tom Cruise and the crew put into this movie to make all these aircraft scenes look convincing and as awesome as possible. And I love movies like this. I want more movies like this because it starts off strong, it has an awesome middle, and that climax, the best I've seen all year. It gets crazier and bigger and wilder as it progresses, and it has such a satisfying ending. It makes this movie absolutely worthwhile. It's one of the best I've seen in the decade so far, the best movie I've seen all year, and easily one of the best blockbusters and legacy sequels ever created. And if we get to the end of the year and this movie's not my #1 movie of the year by the end, I will be very surprised, because this movie set such a high bar that I don't know how it could be topped. But nevertheless, I love Top Gun Maverick. Perfect legacy sequel, and I absolutely love this movie so much that it comes in at #1. That's my ranking of all the movies I've seen this summer, from worst to best. What's your ranking of the summer movies? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear it. Give me your favorite of them all, or you want to give me a whole ranking. You can go do that down below in the comments, and stay tuned. I have a ranking of the Predator movies coming out soon, now that I've seen every single one of them. So although I won't be as actively making videos, I will try my best to still put some stuff out for you guys. So hopefully you guys will stay tuned for that. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So please go do that while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And stay tuned for more.